I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is Stoneblock 4. More Stoneblock 4, and today is a pretty big episode, as this is the episode where we should be able to start the process of producing antimatter. And so, just to recap, last episode we went through the entire process of making fissile fuel and HDPE sheets, which are all going to be needed in order for us to be able to technically make all of the waste required for antimatter. Now, I think today's biggest challenge is going to be getting water into the reactor, the fission reactor itself. The water and coolant is one of the toughest things to typically handle, and I would be worried about power, but we are producing quite a bit of it. So I don't actually want to use the Mekanism route of recycling water from turbines. Instead, I would really just like to void the steam if at all possible, and potentially use it later on down the road if we do need more power, and just make sure we can sustain this fission reactor with water from another source. I think this is going to be our biggest challenge, as we don't have a sink per se to be able to significantly send water from one place to another. We also don't have integrated dynamics, which is another really good mod that can handle all of this. But what we do have is Super Factory Manager. And there are some interesting ways that we can use this and manipulate some other mechanics in order to get all the water needed for this operation. Okay, first things first though, we've got to actually build a reactor, and there's a really cool mod that is already included in this pack that allows us to be able to see how we can build a reactor. And this is pretty cool. So all you have to do is you need to go into and right click any of the reactor parts, for example this, and hit U and see how they're used. All of these mechanics right here. And then we can start going in here and defining some sizes. And I've already technically done this. I was like, I want a width and possibly a length of 9 by 9. I've built these reactors in the past, so I kind of know roughly how large I want. And I was like, I don't know how tall I really want this. Do I want this like 13 blocks tall? Do I want it 15 blocks tall? How tall do I want it? Well, that is something that the results tab is really helpful for. So I took and set my burn rate to right around 250 is right where I want it. And then I started to play around with the different heights. And it turns out that in this pack, to be able to get a nice sustainable burn rate of 250 without worrying about overheating the reactor, well, we are going to need it to be a 9 by 9 by 16 tall reactor. And this little mod right here tells us how many of all the blocks we're going to need in order to complete this thing. So some fission reactor casings, 120, a few reactor ports, and we're going to need also some logic adapters. I think 5 of those specifically are what we are going to be using today. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't auto build it for you, but I've laid out a 9 by 9 here, and then we need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 blocks tall in all corners. Now, what's interesting is it just gives us enough with that 120 being the actual frame itself. But typically I like to make the bottom part of the reactor casing and then also fill in the top with reactor casing full blocks too. But it looks like we can actually use reactor casing now on the bottom and top, which wasn't always the case. So you know what, to mimic the glow that I've seen in like actual reactors, I think this right here will look pretty cool. I used some bright cyan anti-blocks to place underneath, and once this whole thing is filled in, it'll help illuminate this a lot. I'm going to need 325 of the fusion rod assemblies. I got this laid down, and we can use this as a grid because we do want to build this in a very particular pattern, much like you see right here. Sort of this checkerboard pattern, making sure to cover as much space as possible while leaving a air gap in between all of the rods. And to make this a lot easier, I can just simply use the construction stick. Ah, it's so nice. And then also the control rod assemblies, we can put that in our offhand and click here, and that's going to place all of the control rod assemblies on the top. Now, man, I really wish this was connected textures in this pack. I'm pretty sure that's an external mod that does that. I don't know why, but it looks a lot better when this does fully connect. Maybe after the reactor is fully assembled, it'll do that. I have no idea. Now, with the glass all set up, there's a couple of other things we're going to need. I'm going to put fissile fuel in from this side. Over here, we can handle things like our steam. And then in the back, this is going to be our waste ejection port. And then over here, we can say water. This is actually where we're going to insert water. So we use our configurator tool to actually change the modes on this, by the way. So I believe it's just simply right click. We got to make sure this is not in wrench mode. Just put it in any other mode. Shift right click, And you can see it's output coolant, input. This is going to be water. That's an input. This is going to be fissile fuel. That's an input. This will be steam or coolant, which will be output here. And then over here in the back, this will be waste, output waste. Perfect. Now, believe me, this next step you're not going to want to miss, because this should prevent your reactor from blowing up in case of an emergency. So this is very important, and using these logic adapters will save your base. Now, this is very simple, and I'm going to place it right up top here. We're going to have 4 different checks that are going to take place, and those checks, if any, happen, we essentially want to turn the reactor off. So how do we do that? Well, we need to set the mode on each one of these. For example, high temperature, this one is set, and this will emit a redstone signal essentially whenever this happens. You can see redstone mode, high temperature, status, and output when reactor reaches dangerous temperatures. It will send a signal, and that's kind of important. The next, we have critical waste. If the waste builds up, we want it to shut off. This one, if it has critical damage, we want it to shut off. And this one, if it's insufficient fuel, we want it to shut off as well. Now, down here on the bottom, this is the one we want on activation mode. But what is odd is this will say activate the reactor when powered. But if all of those by default send power, or basically will send a redstone signal when something happens, then why would this be defaulted to that mode? Well, this is where we have to reverse this. And thankfully down here, we can set this to inverted, where now the status is powered. And whenever it receives a signal, it will unpower it. And we can send that signal by simply using a little bit of redstone cabling here from more red. And you notice it is already powered because there's no fuel inside. So one of these are already triggering, and that is going to be the insufficient fuel. You can see status is outputting, which keeps this shut off. Now, the good part is that anytime you want to override that, you just simply right click here and hit scram. This will make sure to shut off the actual reactor. Now, another thing I want to do for right now is give this a constant redstone signal with this lever to make sure that the reactor doesn't turn on until I want it to turn on, even after I give it some fuel for right now. So this is our current shut off switch, emergency shut off switch. And this is going to be important because we have no water in this reactor, so we don't want to do anything with it until we know that we can supply this with sufficient water. So now, next step, figure out how we're going to get water and enough water into this darn thing. And for this, I present to you the dynamic tank. I don't know, hear me out. Not just the dynamic tank from Mekanism, which I have technically, I don't think I've ever used the dynamic tank. This is going to be in combination with Super Factory Manager. And I have some interesting things to sort of explain as to how this is going to function in the first place. So first of all, how's a dynamic tank actually going to work, and what does a dynamic tank do? Well, a dynamic tank stores a ton, and I mean a ton of a particular type of liquid. And it holds it all physically like inside of this like structure. And we can actually send items into its interface to keep this full. And there's a particular item that just happens to be in this pack that's going to make this operation, keeping it constantly filled, very, very easy. And that special item, hear me out, is going to be from Project E. And that is the Evertide Amulet. Now, the dynamic tank itself, very easy, just some dynamic tank blocks, and then also structural glass. And this is just about everything we need in order to build, well, this structure. Right? I think I missed a single block right here. But yes, as soon as we place in the last few blocks, this whole thing should fill in and should create a dynamic tank. I think its maximum size is an 18 by 18 by 18. So after you get everything placed in, I think the last bit is just putting in a dynamic valve. And once you have yourself a valve, a way to send fluids in and out, you're good to go. And just this size alone, which is a 3 by 3 by, I believe, 17 blocks tall, which is, I just took it up that high for aesthetics. This thing can hold, what is that? That is like 20, let's see, knock that off here. Wow, 2 million buckets? Is that what I'm seeing here? Yes, 2 million buckets. 2.5 million buckets, mind you. And so this, in combination with our other setup, oh man, with SFM and the ability for it to transfer fluids incredibly quickly, and also transfer like almost the entire contents of this instantly in that tick space. Oh, This is going to be nice. Now, keep in mind, at the moment, this is all in theory. I did very little testing. I didn't actually test this max size. The only thing I did test was like a regular 3x3, and it seemed like it was going to be able to keep up, but I didn't actually test it inside the reactor itself. We're going to test here, though, but not going to put fizzle fuel in just yet. Now, the Evertide amulet itself is pretty darn easy. All of these things we do have automated. I'm just going to need, yeah, a little bit of temperature. It looks like Enderium block. Yeah, we have everything here to be able to just send this straight to the world engine. And so now that I have the Evertide amulet, let's set this both to empty, and we are going to try to empty the Evertide amulet, which is an unlimited water source in an item form. And in doing so, you notice it filled the capacity instantaneously. Also, the capacity changed on me whenever I put this in. So interesting. I wonder why it did change. Also, we need to make sure that is set to empty so it stays here constantly. Okay, so not 2 million buckets. It's actually 53,000 buckets, almost, yeah, 53,500 buckets. That's still a tremendous amount. And I think between both of these tanks, we should be able to transfer that into this reactor with Super Factory Manager. Oh yeah, we've got to get that set up now. And I mean, this is really simple. I'm just going to use the full size blocks here, carrying them along, and make sure they all get connected up to this point. And after doing this, to these connection points, I'm going to use the small connections right here, and same on this side. This is just going to make actually setting this up a little bit easier so we can access that port. Also, I think it looks a little bit cleaner here. Look at that. So now let's talk actually setting up the SFM. Oof. Okay, so here we will have the manager that is going to go right here, and we need to send fluid that is going to be coming from here and here, and send it into here. Now, we are going to need our label gun, so I will take this, and we are going to need a factory manager programming disk, and this is a really simple program to make. First thing we're going to go and do is just set it to view examples, a simple program. This is basically all we're going to need, except we are going to remove this center bit, and then instead of 20 ticks do, we are actually going to do redstone pulse do. I believe if I spell pulse right. So every redstone pulse do and end, and we need to set up what is going to be in the middle. So that is very simple. We go into examples, and then we can actually go into the fluids. So there is a section in here, wherever it's at, right here, fluid and other resources. And we can just take this very simple fluid code right here. So we go in here. I'm just going to basically copy this whole section like that, and Control C, exit back out, go back in here, and then paste this in. And then I'm just going to move this around just so it looks a little bit nicer. Now we're going to take from tank. This is the input we're taking from, or inputting from the tank, and then we're going to output to reactor. Now, with Mekanism, we do want to define the actual sides of the machines that we are taking and sending to. So, for example, like on this block, we could say the north. So for the reactor itself, we can say north side, I believe. So north side, like that. And then for these tanks, we can specify whatever side this is, east for both of them. So we'll go into here and say east side. Beautiful. So this is very simple. This is basically all the code. And whenever we give this a redstone pulse, it is going to run that program, taking from these tanks and sending it to here. And we can use something like a pulse timer to pulse this incredibly fast. And I hope it's going to be fast enough. We're going to have to do a bit of testing, but now we need to take and pull our labels by shift right clicking with the label gun. And we need to define what the reactor is, which is this right here, and then define what tank is, which are these two right here. And then we just simply right click and we push that to this. Now, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to see water build up in this just yet. And that's because I'm not giving it a redstone pulse. But as soon as I do, this should build up incredibly fast. Honestly, within its first pulse, I bet it's going to, yeah, nearly instant fill. But we set this to 2 ticks, and now this is going to feed this with so much water. And I think this is going to be a substitution for many of the other methods that I've used in like all the mods packs. Now in this reactor, another byproduct that we probably want to get rid of as of right now is going to be steam, and we can just simply put a ultimate trash can right up next to this, and that should void automatically because this is going to push the steam into the trash can. And now we've got to focus on the waste and how we are going to set up waste processing. And this is where things get a little bit more complicated because we have a new block and a new multi-block structure that we're going to have to incorporate into everything. And this is where things get super confusing too, right? Because we have to plan this beforehand, because moving around radioactive materials is super dangerous with the Mekanism mod. It can irradiate your base, and if you don't have the proper gear to be able to handle it, you're going to be stuck ticking and dying over and over again, and everything else that's living in your base. For waste management, this is where I've ran down some pressurized tube all the way down here. This is also going to hold a nice buffer for us. The more cables we have, the larger the buildup of the buffer. And right over here, we are going to split this into two. So right here, it's going this direction and this direction. We're going to be splitting it up to making plutonium and polonium, both of which are going to have two different processes. And I'm hoping that I don't need more than one neutron activator for this, because typically you wouldn't need more than one neutron activator to be able to handle this operation normally, or solar neutron activator. Now, all of this is needed to be able to make the different pellets. We're going to need plutonium and polonium pellets, and we're going to have to produce a bit of them before we can even make the SPS, which allows us to technically make the antimatter we're going to need. So having a buildup of these is always kind of nice. And so we are going to need an isotropic centrifuge on one side. I'm just going to figure out which one do I want to do first. I think the isotropic centrifuge is probably the easiest. I mean, honestly, they're both pretty easy, but the byproduct handling is not easy, and that is what is going on over here. So after they have gone through either or the neutron activator or the isotropic centrifuge, we have to actually take the things that they make, which is the polonium and plutonium, and turn them into pellet form. And that is actually where this is going to come into play. So we need a pressurized reaction chamber. We've got that up and running. And this is basically receiving items in the configuration from the side, which is going to be fluorite. And so let's get an extractor, export bus. And I've got my AE set up. And we just need to send some fluorite to this. Plop that in there. That is going to start receiving that. And it needs to basically send that dust over here to the pressurized reaction chamber. After that process has taken place, it's going to receive some other products that's going to go into the chemical side. So the chemicals right here, and then we need to also give this water. So let's get an entangled porter, just like the ones we've been using. I'm also going to make another one because we got to get one on the other side. And we'll take the entangled porter, set it on the back here, and I am going to say, hey, make sure this is water. And then we are going to set this to fluids, and we're going to auto output water directly into here, and you can see the water has gone in. So we're basically prepping this up, but there is a really nasty thing that gets produced whenever we do this, and that is going to be spent nuclear waste. There is nothing that we can really use it for other than placing it inside of radioactive waste barrels and letting it decay. So I have that outputting to the bottom. That is going to route up through the pipes, and it is auto outputting, by the way, and that is also under the chemicals tab. It is outputting directly down here automatically, and we'll start to fill up these barrels. Every time we produce a single item, it is going to produce an entire bucket of waste. These hold like 512 buckets each. So yeah, we can make quite a bit, and this should be able to house basically everything we're going to need, but its decay rate is so small. So wherever you put these buckets or these waste barrels, don't ever plan on breaking them because you're probably never going to be able to. The default decay rate is 1 millibucket. 1 millibucket every single second, basically every 20 ticks that happen in game. Can it possibly be tick accelerated? Possibly. Is it something to really concern yourself with? Not really. Just make sure that you shut this off once you receive enough polonium and plutonium to continue on with everything in Mekanism. I mean, for the most part, the only thing they're really used for is like the SPS casing. And as far as the polonium pellets go, they are used for a few upgrades that you'll need for Mekanism gear. Outside of that, it's really not used that much. So beautiful. Now that all of this is handled, I do want to input over here. So once this has produced, like the isotropic centrifuge, from here, I want this to take in from the bottom So we'll say, hey, input from the bottom and then output automatically to this side. And I want it to carry our product all the way over here through this corridor and carry it back out through the pressurized tube. This is how we are going to get this all transferred over. And I'm pretty excited about this. So there we go. That's how simple this one is. And it just needs some power and we'll get some upgrades potentially in here. I don't know how much we're going to need, but there we go. Now to work on the harder one. This is the multi-block that we've worked up to actually being able to produce. Now let's go ahead and make this. Oh boy. All right. So there's going to be a lot more things involved. I do need neutronium nuggets. I thought I had this set up. Actually, I guess I don't have this linked. No, I did not link this. Interesting. Okay. So now I can take these nuggets here. Let's make more because we do need to make an ingot to make the quest book happy. There we go. Now we have a neutronium ingot. Perfect. And now all of the things are complete for this multi-block. So I should have everything. I think a reactor vent is the only thing I don't have, but we can simply craft all of this up. So this multi-block, very, very interesting. And so we've got to put this together, but this is the thing I'm most nervous about today. So let's go ahead and replace this in. I am going to have to move this because I do believe this is going to get in the way. Place that light a little bit higher and then place down the activator. So this is down. Now what we should be able to do is click on here and then click this button. And that is going to allow us to see the actual reactor. So we kind of know how to place it. Now it does have an empty spot right here in the center, if I'm seeing that correctly. Very interesting. And so we'll just fill this in, continue our way all around by placing these carbon plating blocks. And it looks like it surrounds this. And at the very top, we have this, we have this empowered void crystal block. Piping goes down the middle into this. I mean, these are some cool looking blocks. I got to give them that. And then some whisper glass, which is a very pretty looking glass, by the way, but we only need like 8 of these, it looks like. So not very many of them. There we go. And I think it even goes in the front. Yeah, and that's it. So we finish surrounding this and that should be completed. We open this up and how do I know it's fully completed? It just says idle. I think that lets us know. Okay, so with this custom machinery and custom multi-block, we have to give it heat, which is something that that's going to take some time. The resistive heater needs to go beside this. We need to set it to a certain value so it can get up to that temperature. And I believe to be able to produce this, we need at least 420 degrees Celsius built up in this. And so we already know that 2000 RF is going to be necessary to get it over that point. Let's just try 3000 RF. Let's see if that will get us to that temperature. And yes, it definitely gets us to that temperature. Honestly, exceeds it by a significant amount. I'm almost wondering if like 2000 would be more than enough. Oh, it's still going. It's still going. Now inside for the configuration, let's go ahead and set this up. I mean, everything is fine, I believe, is set as input, but we do want this to be output. So we actually want to change all of these until they are completely gone. And then we'll set this to output and then auto output enabled. I mean, that should be fine. We just want to make sure that we can pipe this over here. And looking at this, I mean, 500 RF per tick seems rather fair. I mean, that is essentially what we're giving this, and it's producing more than enough heat to do this. And I still, what's the reasoning behind the 420 exactly? Like why that specific number, huh? All right, nice. But anyways, so there we go. All of this, and I'm hoping that I have everything configured. I don't know if you can hear the tone of my voice, but this custom machinery has me super worried about all of this. And I'm hoping the auto export does work. And we want to make sure we don't accidentally break any pipe ever, especially once we turn it on. Speaking of turning it on, let's do a FTB backup and we'll just make sure to start this at this point. I think that would be a good command to run in this situation when I'm playing around with variables that I don't know. And then we can go ahead and use this. For one, we have water that I've never used this setup before with water. Then we also have this block, which I've never used before. The goal is that it will split these two into two different lanes. That's usually how I get this all set up and we evenly produce. But yes, quantum entangle porter going on here. And then we are going to set fizzle fuel. And then underneath the chemical tabs, we are going to go into the back here and we're going to set this to auto output. That is now filled with fizzle fuel. And now because everything is situated with the reactor, we should be able to flip this lever and the reactor should turn on. Now we notice water is staying still in here, but we haven't actually upgraded the burn rate. This is set to a really low burn rate and we should be able to go to at least 250 here without encountering any problems. So first thing, let's try a burn rate of 50, making sure water is staying stable, and it definitely is. And our hope is that if the water doesn't stay stable, that everything else will sort of go away. We also want to check now, because we do have waste coming in, is this actually processing? Oh, so we need neutronium. I do want to get an automated way of sending this in, but let's just put like a stack in here and see how long this lasts. And does it work? Okay, I'm going to shut things down because we do have stuff built up. I'm going to shut this off right now because I do not know why this is not actively processing and says idle. So now my only guess here is that the temperature may not be enough that we're not providing. So I'm going to set this to 1,000. And let's see if that bottom number where it says dissipated goes up to 420. And does it start processing? This is the weird on and in things of using like a machine that I'm not familiar with. And no, it's still not functioning. Aha. Think I found the culprit. I was missing a couple of blocks. It's so weird with these multi-blocks. Okay, but there it goes. And now it is functioning correctly. And I think I had the temperature possibly set right. Like 500 RF. I do want to continue to try that. That seemed way more reasonable. Okay, so checking also over here because this side we have to worry about. Just making sure that is empty. We have actually produced a pellet. Over here, we've produced 3 pellets. Okay, so that's already a good indication. I do have some interesting feelings, though, about possibly not being able to shut this off. Maybe removing the piles would be the best way to shut this thing off. Man, these have big buffers. I don't know. Normally, I would use this redstone toggle to shut these off whenever we go to switch it into our other mode, but we'll figure it out as we go. So with that, it is back to the reactor. Let's turn it back on and start playing with the rates again. Let's now bump it up to 100. Making sure water is still being kept up with. 150. Water is still being kept up with. Wow, this is fantastic. 180. I'm scared to bump it up too far. Still working just fine. 200 at a burn rate. We're getting up there. That is looking pretty darn good. I think 250 is definitely doable. And we're looking really good. Yeah, our heat is like perfect. Everything is perfect. We're running nice and smooth. And our coolant is dissipating and going away as in being voided like it's supposed to. Water's being kept up with. Oh, and waste is being produced. And this is functioning. It is producing. Waste is building up in here, which is kind of what I want to see. And that is then producing it. Oh boy. This is going good. We just got to get some upgrades in these machines. So let's go ahead and shut this down temporarily while we have this running. We already have like 117 of these built up. That is quite a lot. 24 over here. I mean, this is ultimately how we are going to produce our antimatter because polonium is a thing that does produce the antimatter. So this we need to let build up a little bit more over here. So we need this to be our primary. So you know what? I'm going to let this run a little bit longer, but I mean, neutronium piles, I guess I could have it automatically go in here from like AE or something. I mean, this is the thing we are going to need the most of, to be honest. You know, I think an easy way to send this over here is just by utilizing some modular routers. So I'm going to use a Cinder Mark III. This should give us infinite range on our modular router. And so I'm just going to plop down here into the same area where we're producing it, which is right over here, and just pull directly from this barrel. So we'll have our puller module that's going to pull down from the bottom, and that will pull straight out of the barrel of the piles, which is perfect. And then we'll place in our cinder module, and that should take the piles and I believe send it to that location, hopefully. And it looks like it worked to me. There's 64 in here, and I don't think they're depleting anymore. Now at this point, I think I have plenty of the pellets. I've got both of those sort of built up, and over here, like 200, that's more than enough. So now it's time to make the SPS. Oh yeah, I also decorated myself a little bit. This is primarily to make the quest happy, as we do get rewarded with some bonus SPS casings after we make our initial 40 here and our 3 ports. So we just need our SPS casing. There's 40 of those, and technically I only really need 1 supercharged coil. And once we have the supercharged coil, that will get us rewarded with the rest of the stuff we need, including some more structural glass, which we're going to need to surround this whole thing. And if we also take a look at the same setup that we used before, it tells us exactly how much reactor glass we're probably going to need. Now, this thing is definitely going right here. Now, I think structural glass should work, but normally I use reactor glass, but we're going to see. It should form once we get this whole thing up and running, but it is a 7x7 sort of sized machine, and it starts off by building out these like 3x3 areas that are within 5 blocks space in between each other. And I like to add the sides on the 3 here and continue on the bottom just like this. And then I surround that with the actual casing. And this will give us our first like sort of foundation for building this thing out. We've got to do this on all sides, just like this. So there's our 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, a 3x3 right here. We also build it out on this side, not there. And then we also build it out going like so. And then yet again, we just surround it with the casings. Once you get that structure basically done, you should see some particle effects, and we have 3 ports to put in here. One is going to be for actually sending in what this is producing, the polonium, I do believe. Yeah, the polonium. And then we need a spot up top, which I think is where I'm going to place this, that is going to send power. So we'll call this one the power spot. We'll place that in, and then we'll put the supercharged coil directly inside. This is actually where we're going to send power to the thing. And I think the best place for sending the waste is going to be the bottom. So that's going to send into the bottom here. And then we can output from any of these sides the antimatter. So I think I'm just going to do the right side possibly. Yeah, that's going to work for right now. This will be the output. All right, so just like before, I think on our wrench, we do have to configure this. So this is going to be input. This is an output, which is outputting. And then up here is going to be our power. Speaking of power, point. We are going to want to definitely use our points for this. So we'll make sure to clear our network, place this in, and then make sure to select our main. And we want to set it to a very specific power. Anything that gets sent here is going to be voided if it's not being used. So we want to make sure we send the exact amount, and I know exactly how much will work, and that is 3 million RF per tick. Being sent to this is going to be more than enough to be able to handle the burn rate that we currently have. So 3 million RF per tick is going to be running into this and is going to basically be destroyed whenever we start to pump in some waste. Now, when setting this stuff up, I do recommend basically building backwards. Do not like place while these have wastes in them. Get them to the point where waste will be connected to it, and then do it from there, just in case you have to break any pipe if you've made a mistake. Because once you have like a radioactive thing and you see particles on these things, you cannot break these pipes. You are going to irradiate your entire base. So just like that, we are just about ready to go. This right here is going to produce enough, but I don't know if it's enough to handle our current burn rate. We're about to find out. I need to make sure this is set to turned off. So this right here, if I set it to redstone deactivation mode, this should be deactivated. Once this buffer fills up, then the rest of our waste should automatically go here. So let's go ahead and turn this on. We'll make sure that kicks on. This is still feeding into this machine for right now. We just want to make sure that this gets all stopped up, which it has. Perfect. So now all waste is going into here, and this is backing up, which does mean this one is not enough to keep up. which is a bummer because I'm almost positive that just one solar neutron activator is enough to keep up with this burn rate normally. So what exactly does this mean? Well, it means that I'm going to have to make maybe more of these. I don't know how much more, but more of them. I've got most of the machinery set up. I do need to go back to the modular router here, and I'm basically pulling out this first cinder module. I made 2 other cinder modules here, and that way we're no longer sending to the original one. I've ran a whole bunch of cable, and I'm going to take these out. So the goal is that this will actually stop working because I don't know if this is redstone controlled or not. So we need to make sure this builds up and builds up with the waste on this machine, Everything else is going to go into these 2, which I now have piped and ready to go. And we also now have the neutronium piles in here, or neutron piles. The heat should be where it needs to be. Perfect, looking good. And all I got to do now is get it tapped in. And there we go. The waste now runs all the way along the bottom underneath. And then this, whenever it finishes, should output to the side. We do have to configure that. So we'll make sure to set all sides to none, set it to auto output to the right-hand side, and same on this one, just like the other machine, except this one's on the left-hand side. Connect this to the main chain, and that should spark this to start running as soon as I turn the reactor back on. Otherwise, everything's going to crash and burn, but I think we should be fine. Oh boy. And I think 2 of these is going to keep up with our burn rate. We shouldn't see this backing up, which we are not. Beautiful, at least yet, because these have not fully backed up yet. They should back up as soon as this runs out of the neutron piles, which it does have like an initial batch that it is going to get through first. But we are producing antimatter. While slow, we are producing it. I will say this is not the slowest I've seen. I think that's pretty good. And I don't even think these are fully maxing out. I mean, that's pretty nice. So we are producing like 1 millibucket every few seconds or so. It's a little less than a second, but yeah, I mean, that's not too bad. Ooh, something I'm realizing is we are not giving this enough power. I thought 3 million was going to be more than enough, but no. We need significantly more to be able to burn through this faster, and this is actually producing way faster than I thought it was going to. I feel like there's been some rate changes potentially. Yeah, I mean, even 6 mil is not enough compared to some other packs I've been playing. 10 mil? That's so much power. Oh, whew, that's good. 10 mil is definitely more than enough. You can see we are definitely dwindling here in the cable. Now that we have this all set up, what we can do is just use a chemical tank, because this actually only stores, I believe, 1 bucket worth of antimatter. And we could just use a regular chemical tank, and this, I believe, auto outputs into the chemical tank, and this is going to store at least 64 buckets. And we do need more than 10 buckets technically, so just having that fill up that tank is going to give us more than enough to do the things we're going to need to do. For example, like make an antimatter chicken in the future and many other things. Oh boy. But you know what? With this, I think this has been super successful. We went from no fusion reactor to fusion reactor and producing antimatter all in one episode. And I hope you guys learned something new. And believe me, these episodes do take a tremendous amount of time to make. So if you would be so kind and click that subscribe button if you haven't already, give these videos a huge thumbs up. And well, comment down below, is this something that you like seeing or not? Is this complicated enough? Do you think that this was appropriate in the progression that we currently are in? And within how many steps it required to jump between here and here? I feel like that was a huge progression leap. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you very, very much. And without further ado, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks, well, that is going to go out to Little Wumpkus. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting my content in one of the best ways possible. You absolute boss. Thank you so very much, and going above and beyond and getting access to all kind of amazing fun perks over on the Discord, including supporter servers and world downloads. Guys, I appreciate you very, very much. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one, and as always, thanks for watching.